Hello and welcome to Folktales by Might. Have you ever wondered what would happen if Little Red Riding Hood had a smartphone? Or if Unenzi the spider had to navigate the world of social media? Well, you've come to the right place. Here, we dust off the old storybooks and give classic folktales from around the world a fresh, modern spin. Each story is a journey back in time, but with a twist you'll never see coming. We blend the timeless wisdom of ancient tales with the humor and challenges of today. It's the magic of folklore, reimagined for the 21st century. So, if you love good stories, a bit of history, and a lot of imagination, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss a single tale. Let's get lost in a story, shall we?
Elias was a painter, though lately he felt more like a fraud. His canvases were blank, his apartment was a cramped, sun-starved box, and his inspiration had vanished months ago. He spent his days scrolling through the vibrant, successful lives of other artists online, a habit that left him feeling hollowed out and gray. It was on one of these aimless walks through the city's forgotten side streets that he found the mirror. Tucked away in the back of a cluttered antique shop, it was a tall, imposing piece, framed in dark, intricately carved wood that seemed to swallow the light around it. The glass was old, wavy in places with a depth that modern mirrors lacked. He thought it would open up his small apartment, maybe even reflect some much-needed light into his life. The shopkeeper, a man with eyes as old and cloudy as his wares, gave him a strange look as he paid. "Every mirror holds a memory of the faces it has seen," the old man rasped, running a dusty cloth over the frame. This one remembers more than most. Be careful not to lose yourself in it." Elias just nodded, dismissing the comment as eccentric salesmanship. He wrestled the heavy object back to his apartment and leaned it against the largest wall, directly opposite his blank easel. For the first few days, the mirror did exactly what he'd hoped. It made the room feel larger, less claustrophobic, but he started to notice odd things. When he glanced at his reflection, it seemed better. His posture in the mirror was straighter, his tired eyes seemed sharper. The slump of defeat he always felt in his shoulders was gone. He looked down at his own hands, then back at the mirror, and the reflection's hands seemed stronger, more capable. He chalked it up to a trick of the old imperfect glass. Then he began to paint again. The ideas came in a flood, his brush moving with a confidence that felt alien to him. He painted a portrait of the city at night, not as the bleak, lonely place he knew, but as a glittering landscape of opportunity and connection. He finished it in a single night and stared at it, stunned. It was brilliant. It was also something he felt he was completely incapable of creating. He glanced at the mirror, and his reflection was smiling, a proud, knowing look on its face. A chill traced its way down his spine. The better his art became, the more exhausted he felt. He was selling paintings for the first time in years, receiving praise and commissions, but he felt like a passenger in his own life. He would wake up in the mornings feeling drained, as if he hadn't slept at all, while his reflection in the mirror looked more rested and vibrant each day. The true fear began when the reflection started to change the room. One afternoon, he noticed a beautiful antique fountain pen sitting on his desk in the mirror's world. His own desk was empty. He blinked, looked back, and it was still there in the reflection, gleaming. The next morning, the pen was sitting on his real desk. He hadn't bought it. He lived alone. He backed away from the mirror, his heart pounding. The world inside the glass was bleeding into his. He was living in a drab, messy apartment, but in the mirror, the room was becoming elegant and organized. A vase of fresh flowers appeared on a table in the reflection. The next day, the scent of phantom lilies haunted his apartment. He was terrified. He was no longer just looking at a reflection. He was looking at a better version of his life, a life that was slowly and methodically replacing his own. One night he couldn't sleep. He sat on his bed in the darkness, staring at the great black rectangle of the mirror. He watched, breathless, as a shape formed in the gloom of the glass. It was his reflection, but it wasn't mimicking him. It was standing in the center of the mirrored room, holding a paintbrush, dabbing at an unseen canvas. It was painting. Elias was lying in bed, paralyzed by fear, while the man in the mirror was living the life he had always wanted, using the energy it was siphoning from him. The reflection turned its head slowly, its eyes finding his in the dark. It smiled, a gesture of cold triumph, and then it lifted a hand and waved. That was the breaking point. Elias grabbed a heavy blanket and threw it over the mirror, plunging the room into a comforting, ordinary darkness. He felt a wave of relief wash over him, but the next morning, the blanket was neatly folded on his armchair. The mirror was uncovered, gleaming. He tried to move it, to turn it to the wall, but it felt bolted to the floor, impossibly heavy. It didn't want to be moved. A quiet desperation set in. He was a prisoner in his own home, tethered to this parasitic object. That evening he sat at his desk, trying to sketch, but his hands trembled too much. He looked up at the mirror and saw his reflection staring back. Its expression was no longer triumphant, but pleading. It held up its hands as if in surrender. Then it pointed. It pointed at the easel next to Elias, at the fresh blank canvas he had set up days ago. A silent command, a challenge. Elias understood. This thing, this entity, wasn't just a thief. It was an artist. Its currency was creation, and it believed itself to be the superior one. A surge of forgotten anger, of defiance rose in his chest. This was his life, his talent, his hands. He picked up a piece of charcoal and walked to the easel, his eyes locked on the confident gaze of his doppelganger. He began to draw. He didn't draw the idealized cityscapes or the beautiful portraits the thing had been pushing into his mind. He drew the truth. He drew the tiny, cramped apartment, the stained walls, the single window with its view of a brick wall. He drew the feeling of despair, the creative block, the loneliness. He poured all of his own genuine, painful reality onto the canvas. As he worked, he watched the reflection. For the first time, it looked unsettled. It paced back and forth in its perfect mirrored room. The more truth Elias put onto his canvas, the more the reflection's world began to decay. The phantom flowers in its vase wilted. Cracks appeared in its clean walls. The confident, handsome face of the man in the glass began to look haggard, pale, and desperate. It was him. It was the real Elias he was seeing in the mirror again. The reflection rushed to its own easel and began to paint frantically, trying to create its beautiful illusions, but the images flickered and died. His truth was stronger than its lies. Elias drew with a fury he hadn't felt in years, the charcoal snapping in his fingers. He drew himself, not the idealized version, but the tired, frightened, yet defiant man he was. He rendered every line of worry on his own face. As he drew the final stroke, a deep, guttural crack echoed through the room. A fissure raced across the surface of the mirror. The reflection screamed, a silent, agonizing howl, as its world shattered into 1,000 pieces behind it. It reached out a hand, its face a mask of rage and fear, and then it dissolved as the mirror imploded, collapsing into a pile of dark wood and glittering razor-sharp shards. Elias stood panting in the sudden silence, his heart aching. The strange presence was gone. The room felt smaller, messier, and unequivocally his. Weeks passed. He swept up the last of the glass. His apartment was still small. His view was still a brick wall, but his canvases were no longer blank. He painted with a new, hard-won honesty. One evening, while walking home, he caught sight of himself in a dark shop window. He paused, looking at his own ordinary reflection. For a terrifying split second, it gave him a slow, knowing smile, before settling back into his own weary expression. He flinched and hurried away, a cold dread coiling in his gut. He had broken the frame, but he was left to wonder if the memory it held had been destroyed, or if it had simply been set free. Like, share, and subscribe for more.